This is my 1968 Ford Mustang, same as Steve McQueen drove in Bullitt. I rebuilt it myself, all by hand. It is my secret, weekend lover. The engine has sensors that monitor it all as I looking for something to fix. Little white cross is passing, flowers wilting round their base. The last been reached, again I guess, by another silent man. The last been reached, again I guess, by another silent man. They sacked Brian today, 33 years on the job. One little mistake and now he's gone. A few months ago they sacked Matt the same way, marched him through the staff room like a criminal. I wanted to say something but you can't, or if you want to survive, then you've got to learn somehow to find the courage to be just another silent man. Just another silent man. There are so many curves on this mountain road, so many of them are blind, but my car eats them all, for there is nothing wrong. I guess today's the day she no longer needs me. I've been one to call Brian, look mate, it's not like I don't care, but what can I as one man do? Surely you understand, things are not like they were before. To try and keep your job now, somehow you have to learn to be just another silent man. This land is changing, this is a fast changing land. Yeah, I get it, okay. I read the memo, I understand. You wanna say something now, in fact you just wanna scream, but you know that you can't, for if you wanna survive, then mate, you're gonna have to find the courage to be just another silent man. Little white crosses passing by, wilted flowers drying around their base. Last been reached, again I guess, by another silent man. Last been reached, again I guess, by another silent man.
Okay, let's get on. This is probably the last you hear from me tonight because I've got 3 great doctors on. I'm going to let them do the talking. First in, I'll bring my partner in crime, Oost.
Hello, Michael.
How you doing?
We're going to have a lively discussion, I'm sure, tonight.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really lovely discussion. Robin's fantastic. But before we bring in Robin, it's an honor whenever we have him on, and he's so gorgeous. It's literally, I'm sorry, Paul, I love you, but I think this might be the most gorgeous doctor in all of Australia, Professor Ian Brighthope. He's just a joy.
Well,
it's a fair club. It's a fair club.
Hi, Paul. You're gorgeous.
Now, all the way from New Zealand. So we're going a bit early today, simply because of Robin. So we've gone 7 because Robin's coming in from New Zealand. We did an interview with Robin, and it was based on a Substack that Professor Ian Brighthope shared. And I was so moved by it, I reached out to Robin, and he did a great interview with us. And we invited him back to talk with you guys. So I'll move into the background now. And here he is. Thank you for coming back, Robin.
I'm truly honoured to be amongst these group, 2 people who I really admire, and you, of course.
Evening, Robin.
Evening.
Well, why don't we set it off? We all know the history of each other now. And I might let you take it off, Robin. The thing that was pushing you first to do the video that I saw was your belief that if GPs don't learn to be happier or more engaged with their clients than their patients, then they'll be finished. So would you want to start from there, and I'll shoot to that?
Yeah, I know that, and I've been a bit different because for the last 30 years I've been an independent doctor. 25 years ago, New Zealand changed radically, general practice changed radically into becoming a capitation system, which meant that GPs were paid quite well for just having people on their books. So they enrolled people, something I wasn't happy about. I felt prior to that, people would come to you, they maybe go to another doctor, we'd share. But then 22 years ago, they brought in this capitation system, which was really based on the British system, NHS system. But the pressure was where I talked to some people about joining this, and I was told that I had to do 15-minute consultations, but also that 15 minutes was in fact 6 minutes of adequate time with somebody. And I said, look, for 10 years my minimum consult was half an hour, and I even felt pressured in that. So I never joined the system. And people were attracted to this because they were paid quite a lot of money at the beginning of the year. They were given probably $200,000 or $300,000 at the beginning of the year just for enrolling people before they ever saw anybody during that year. And the idea was they keep their fees down. But I think there was a radical change there. Doctors then looked after a population, but not the person in front of them. And I've always believed that we are there with the person in front of us, but honoring that person entirely. For the time they're with us, we are with them. We are their advocate. We are, and everything is private and confidential. And this is where I think we went wrong. And then we were in the pockets of the politicians and the bureaucrats. In fact, the doctors became bureaucrats themselves. And during that time, I've always looked after really complex problems because as an independent GP, you tend to see people with more complex issues. And they come to you to sort those out because you spend more time with them. But in that time, of course, conditions have become more complex. And the simple things that doctors used to see, sore ears, rashes and other things, are managed by people themselves. They don't need the doctor so much. So the doctors are ill-equipped to look at the complexity of what's happening now. And they're being forced into these very narrow consultations. And the good doctors are burning out. And the other ones are really just treating people superficially and are actually opting out, because then you'll go to these centres. This is in New Zealand, but I think it's happening around the world, where you don't see the same doctor twice. So that doctor doesn't have a relationship with the person. And you used to be in this very honored situation of being like a family friend. And you would know them as people, not as conditions. And then therefore always adapt what they're coming to see you about to the person that you know. You know their philosophy, you may know their religion, you may know their loves and whatever. And you would be adapting your treatment to them. And that's what I continue to do. And in the last year or so, I've had more and more doctors come to me and say, I want to do what you do, Robin. I'm really fed up with the system. The problem is that I'm not sure if they've developed the skills to actually sit down with people for that sort of time, or they have anything else apart from prescribing or referral. So do they have do they understand nutrition? Do they understand environmental health? I studied Chinese medicine and I did a lot of acupuncture. So I was more interested in more mind-body stuff. That was particular, and that's where I've gone with my practice. But people need to develop deeper insights into the human condition. And I think that's even more important now, because now we're in the situation where AI is coming in, transhumanism is coming in, and people need an advocate, for a human advocate, to guide them through this complexity. And I think that doctors have been trying to be, they've been pushed into actually supporting these moves towards transhumanism and AI, particularly in the last 5 years through mRNA vaccines, because that is a stepping stone towards that. So I'm thinking this is a very critical time for doctors. And yes, are the doctors that have been studying for the last 20, 30 years, are they going to be needed in the future? That's where I stand.
What are your thoughts, Professor?
Well, I very much agree with Robin. I just, if I can indulge myself, my background was in agricultural science before I did medicine. When I was studying medicine, I loved the sciences, but I couldn't understand a lot of the clinical stuff that we were doing, because things were being called idiopathic, and you guess this and you guess that. You don't really get to the root cause of the patient's problems. So if you've got unproductive animals or pastures, you nourish them and you look for the root cause of their problems. But with humans, we don't. Most of the time, we were talking about anemia before, and iron deficiency anemia. That's one very simple part of learnings. But I decided that after a year in general practice, it wasn't for me. I was in a general practice where there was an old guy who, in the early days, he'd been prescribing tincture of cannabis and tincture of opium and tincture of cocaine. This is going back a long, long time now. But all of those old-fashioned medicines just disappeared. He had a practice of where there was an allergist, so I got interested in allergy, then went overseas and started learning about the immune system. It brought me back to my roots in nutrition and looking at patients from a nutritional perspective, which was completely different to what I'd been trained in. But I learned that patients who were not getting better by visiting the GP and the specialist would often come with problems that were related to their diet, what they were eating, what they weren't eating, what they were deficient in, what they were excess in, sensitivities to foods and chemicals, and a whole range of things. And we started a college of integrative college of nutritional and environmental medicine, and that was in it started in 1978, formalised in 1982, and it's still going very strong, awarding fellowships to GPs and other doctors who really want to learn about the root causes of disease and helping patients, instead of just being clerks, signing forms and not getting to the patient's real problems. And we've taken the college across to New Zealand, and the Integrative Medical Association across to New Zealand. So there is a growing interest, huge interest in doctors now, wanting to really help their patients and really get outcomes that the patients are very happy with, whether it be a psychiatric illness or a psychosocial illness, or whether it be a cancer, a physical problem, heart disease. right across the board, every patient who comes to see a doctor has got either a deficiency of a nutrient or an excess of a toxin. And you've got to look for these things and look deeply. And when you do, you go on a discovery tour that is unbelievable. It's an absolute unbelievable discovery tour. And honestly, I can't emphasize enough how important this is going to be in going into the future if we are going to retain doctor managed patient healthcare. Yes, sure, the doctor will need to use AI and be familiar with it, but I think we can use AI to our advantage. And I do believe that we can turn the tools that they're going to use against us around and prevent this transhumanism business and actually create superhumans in a more natural way. So when I read Robin's frustrations, I empathise with him. I could see it, and I could see it in so many other doctors who come along to. I mean, last week we had our annual ACNAM conference. It was titled Integrative Cancer Care, and the science that came out on those 2 days was absolutely incredible. Integrated cancer care means looking after cancer patients, integrating everything ethical, natural, safe, effective. I hate those words, but we have to use them because it's real. It really is real. You give somebody a vitamin, it's safe, it's effective, and it's not going to cause any serious adverse effects unless you overdose them, of course. But the future of medicine, I'm glad Robin has brought this up, and I'm glad I saw that he saw his video, because it really stimulated me to get behind him and the frustrations and disappointments that he sees in modern Western medicine, because we can turn it around. We just need to make sure the public are on our side. And as far as the politicians and bureaucrats concerned, well, they will need us one day, because they're going to end up with a cancer or a heart disease that's going to take them off. And we have ways of reversing these things, or at least slowing them down. So that's my 2 pence worth. It's probably 5 cents worth by now, maybe $10 worth. I mean, but I'm here to talk to my colleagues and build. In the long run, we need to be building a better healthcare system, a real healthcare system, not a disease care system. We have the medical system. We're great when it comes to acute interventive medicine and save people's lives and so on, trauma, anesthetics, surgery. We're the best. But when it comes to all of this other stuff, we cut, burn and poison cancer patients, and we just make them sicker. So,
Professor, a lot of my patients, they came, for surgery, so they had an acute scalpel steel deficiency. And we did. It's like the time scale of my practice. When you're doing. In 3 minutes, you can go from a healthy, alive patient to someone dead, with a lot of these drugs. And sometimes you go the other way, you get someone who's dead and you bring them to life, and the time scale is very different. Robin, my practice was in hospitals, so I watched the same shit show. I think it's important that you were independent. It's only through independence that you could say, actually, I'm going to spend as much time as it takes to get to know this patient, And I watched the interview too that I missed. And, you talked about touch, and I was remembering how when I had my fingers on the pulse, I would often have my fingers on the pulse. So, especially when the patient's asleep or even if they're not stable, they're very sick. And it was a form of communication. I don't know. Yes, I was with a skilled hand. You can learn a lot from a stethoscope or a finger on the pulse. And thankfully I'm old enough to remember, how to use those. But I also love technology. In the last few years, I became obsessed with ultrasound because you know, pocket ultrasound was like having a tricorder. You could look in, not only could you hear the heart, you could watch the heart contract and see exactly what's going on. And in critical care, where seconds count, you know, you don't want to be guessing. You want to be guessing as little as possible, at least, you know. So anyway, that's my background. But it was the communism. It was the creeping communism. It was the corporatization of healthcare. You know, I just watched as we became more corporate and more centralized by default. You know, further power was devolving further and further away. And then at one stage, I felt like suddenly, you know, you were a boomer, you were not. There was a shift in perceptions towards older attitudes. And I tended to believe that even though it had become a bit of a nanny state system, that you could improve healthcare just a few percent if you could just do a little thing different each day. And because you thought maybe this would be better. If you do that for years, incrementally, you make big changes, you know, and you learn things. And that's how I survived within the system, you know. But it became so stifling and so controlling, you know. And like in GP practice, the nurses were spending more than half their time looking at a screen when they should have been looking at what was going on in the operating theatre. So I come from a totally different culture, you know, like a culture of safety. It was more like a pilot, and I was always looking for, okay, how do we deal with these emergencies, and how do we do it better, and how do we prevent the emergencies happening, you know? So when COVID came, I was on to Professor Ian's vitamin D, you know, and well aware of the sun and the early treatment. And I got in trouble for talking about it because back in 2021, that made you a deplorable anti-vax cooker who you know, should be shunned.
I've got a thing here from the UK. Someone in the UK is watching. And this agreeing with you, Robin. In the UK, it's in and out and push pills, and basically they don't listen. It's the only non-doctor here. I have to say, I would love to have you as a doctor, Robin. It's just, you know, just actually have someone to sit down with you and listen, because I think this culture where they're racing you in and out, doctors sometimes discount something you say, maybe because it's just too much, or they just don't have time.
It's just time, Michael. It's just time. If you're given a 7-minute block, that's, you know, you're going to do your best in a 7-minute block, you know, and but it shouldn't be like that. I think is more your point and Dr. Roberts' point. It shouldn't be like that. People know it shouldn't be like that, but it's a sign that we've got a healing profession which is clearly badly off the rails, and the doctors are not happy, and the patients are not happy. But I would argue that trust is core with that, you know, and informed consent, and, you know, real respect for the preciousness of life. These are all good places to start. And I'm not sure that's out there in the way that I believed it was before 2020. So,
yeah, my father. Sorry, I was going to say my father in the UK was a doctor in North London, a GP, and I grew up in the household, so I've grown up all my life in a general practice household. But he said to me, and I when I moved out to New Zealand at the end of the 70s, it was to really escape that system. And when I'd already done 6 years in hospital medicine, but really my heart was with people and general practice. And I loved the fact in 1981, we could spend a quarter of an hour with people. That was much longer than what happened in the UK. But of course, then I got into a deeper inquiry with people. I started to study acupuncture, Chinese medicine, mind-body medicine, trauma. And I realized that was a ridiculously short time. And in fact, you're just getting going, really. It takes people 20 minutes to relax. And then you have a meaningful conversation. And that's when you have aha moments. And we were always taught at medical school that the most important thing was the history, which was talking to somebody. That was 95% of it. Then examination was important. And we didn't even have ultrasound in those days, didn't have scans, had x-rays. I mean, most of the things went to laparotomy if you had something in the belly. So the history was incredibly important. Now it concerns me because I have young people coming into me to practice, and this happens because I do a day in student health, and I've done that for 20 years. And they will come in, a 21-year-old will come in and say, look, I want a blood test. Before they say anything else, I want a blood test. To which you say, well, and that's a conditioning that somehow we will be able to detect everything from a blood test. Therefore, the inquiry isn't needed. And that concerns me somewhat. And of course, I turn it around and say, well, why? And you get to a deeper issue. Sometimes you find that a father or grandfather has just died of a heart attack, for instance, or somebody had cancer. And sometimes as they want to know their testosterone because they want it to be higher than their flatmates, which is often that. But ultimately, we have to then step back and say, well, what do you want? What's an act as an inquirer, as somebody, an advocate for them, but somebody who is actually going to provide something a little bit more than they expect. I think older people do know this. They remember a doctor who looked at the tongue, said 99, said, tapped the back, and had that physical contact with them. But the younger people, I think, are being denied this mentoring that I think we should be performing.
I was in a hospital in LA in the 80s as I think final year of medical school, and I was horrified that the residents and doctors said, and medical students said, "Oh no, we don't listen to people's chests. A chest X-ray is more sensitive and specific." And wait another generation or two, and there it is. The same with this. That everyone sits and does what they call a card flip. So they go through all the different numbers. And I remember one day working as a anesthetic registrar. I was covering a small, very small city ICU and the whole hospital. And at the end of the shift, I did blood tests on myself. I didn't have time to eat. I didn't have time to drink. I had more asterisks against my blood tests than anyone in intensive care that night. But the numbers
you were not a healthy doctor. This is not good. Robin, you actually mentioned that not only is Dr. Paul unhealthy, but you mentioned in your summary that doctors are miserable. What makes doctors miserable?
I think they're trapped. I think they've been trapped for a long time. There was a report of a few years ago I read about American doctors in training. 25% of them were on antidepressants. And they commonly described a pressure, being pressured to their heads like a clamp by the training, which was a forcing in of information.
I think I call it APRA. I think
that's right. So
that's what I call the pressure between my.
Yeah. And I have people come to my practice and they're interested in, I think most of us have some idea when we start becoming a doctor that we'll be involved in healing. And very quickly that healing is ground out of people. And I've actually had people, students come to me, and they're amazing. Their presence just creates a change in the people that they're talking to. And in fact, all those people who have been exceptional in this way have had to give up medicine. and do something else. They felt completely abused by the system. And I believe we're selecting doctors, I mean, the wrong way. I think we're selecting them on what I would say left brain deductiveness, but not on the humanities. And there are those who start off with the humanities and want to be human and connect, but in fact have it drilled out of them. And I think deep down, this isn't just that they're down, it's an existential crisis in doctors, that they feel, they feel, I suppose, they're not being honored. And this is why we're seeing mental illness in doctors. We're actually even seeing increasing suicide rates in doctors. They just do not feel their presence is being appreciated in a very deep way. So it's very serious. I think it's more than just they're depressed and frustrated. I think their whole purpose in life, certainly those doctors who start off like this, is being annulled.
I think
when I was in when I was in hospital with this heart thing, there was this beautiful nurse, an African migrant, and he was like in his 50s, and he'd just become a nurse in the last 6 years or so. And some old guy said, "What are you doing being a nurse?" And this is the middle of the night. And he just said, he was doing stock market or something, and he just said, "I just wanted to make a difference in people's lives." And I can't accept that most doctors, that isn't the driving force for a lot of doctors, that's what they want to be. And I can understand it. You go into this, we saw one recently, just pick up a prescription, and it's a little cubicle and they go, "You've only got 5 minutes with him. So you just get in, 5 minutes, say who I am, do this," and then gone. And I think I was talking to you, Robin, about it. He had a guitar on his wall that he wanted to learn to play, and had been there for years. He never found the time. And you're thinking, you know, you could sense the unhappiness in him. How about yourself, Ian? Do you see it with doctors?
Yes, I do. I see it a lot. And when they come to the college and they spend 5 days, when I was training them at the College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine, you would see a change after 2 days of talks and chatting, because they'd all be living in. We'd sometimes do it up in the country or somewhere where it was cozy for everybody to get together, and it was a collegial sort of atmosphere, having about 60 to 100 doctors at once. And they were very, very enthusiastic. After a couple of days, they were asking questions that were relevant to basically what we're not taught in medicine about healing. I mean, we're taught about wound healing, but we're not talking about real healing. And this is where people actually come to the doctor. They are to be a doctor means to be a teacher, and to be a physician means to one that heals. So we've got to be both, and we've got to apply the tools so that we achieve both educating the patient, informing the patient, as well as healing whatever is ailing them. And some of the tools that we've got in nutritional and environmental medicine and integrative medicine actually create a healing environment. And patients end up coming back saying, "I haven't felt as well as this in many, many, many decades." Or the wife will come back and say, "Harry's been out mowing the lawns and washing the car and doing the gardening. And previously Harry had been watching television, drinking, and doing very, very little." So you can actually get people back to being functional human beings again. And that's the beauty of what we can do. But that's not taught to us in medical school. My training in medical school was, I destroyed my medical career in fourth year when I started asking questions about the patient's diets. You don't ask those sort of questions. Doctor, you don't talk to your professor like that. You don't ask difficult questions. So it is like that. And I mean, there is a show tomorrow night on the ABC. Forgive me for mentioning the term ABC. But it's all about bullying in medicine, and we see that. I mean, I saw it all the way through, the bullying, because I was a mature age student. I could just see the manipulation of the minds of the young doctors who were coming in. And it was very sad to watch for me. It was very frustrating, but I think
it's quite hierarchical, and it's a little bit like being in the military. In some ways, I feel like Mai Lee and Mark Hobart are facing military tribunals. I mean, they're court tribunals for a reason. And we've got, and I worry about the mindset, you know, of the judiciary who may not be, you know, it's like there's two realities, and they have a carefully constructed Potemkin village of truth, which I would contend doesn't map well onto reality. But truth is, you often say that, Michael. You know, you expect the doctor to tell you the truth, as I understand it. It doesn't have to be.
Someone to tell us the truth, yeah.
But what happens when your doctor's delusional? What if the whole what happens when the whole system is delusional? You know, and then and certainly we've been facing censorship and bullying at all levels. Ian was talking about just the life and training of a doctor is one of So that's how I see it. That we've gone out of the military ranks. We've spoken against the ranks, and you get punished. And honestly, when I think back on it, my hearing in 2021 wasn't what I said, but the forums in which I said it. You know, I was in the public, and it was meant to be private information or not publicly discussed. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, I would agree. Most doctors are deeply traumatized. When I trained, when I went to hospital medicine, we stayed in the doctor's mess. We were medical officers. We were actually part of a military, and we'd been through, when you're looking back, very much like a military training. Most of my work now involves trauma, identifying trauma, particularly childhood trauma, adverse childhood events that have actually stayed with the person and in fact come out later on in their lives when they've had other trauma. And it will come out with not only with emotional health, but also affecting their immune system. And to do this work, you have to trace your own trauma. If you're going to be truly empathetic, you have to start going through a process of understanding the trauma you've been through in your life, which of course doesn't match the person in front. We're often lucky compared with them. So the deep trauma that most doctors hold a lot of this trauma, and I think this is contributing, and they haven't faced it and they haven't healed from it. And that is a very dangerous situation, particularly when they retire and they often go and die because there's nothing else for them to live for. They haven't really discovered themselves. So doctors are deeply traumatized. And of course, if you've been very seriously traumatized, you may become a victim to that trauma, or you may go the other side. You may become very narcissistic and live a delusionary life where you're actually critical of others and not particularly empathetic. Both have trauma. Most people don't develop into narcissism, but a lot of my work now is identifying those people who have been narcissistically abused, particularly within the family, and then it happens at work, and then it happens later on. And the one job I have is to appreciate this and to act in a different way, to actually not shame the person. And you can shame the person by just looking the other way or looking at the computer. You can shame the person by not listening properly. Once you start listening compassionately to somebody, it can shift people. And you don't have to try that hard. You just have to be present with them and realize it's a privilege. And there it enhances your own health. So trauma, and I think one of the reasons doctors are in the state they're in is they haven't necessarily understood trauma in that way or understood. I have given talks to doctors about this, and I've had cardiologists starting to cry. These are top cardiologists, and which is interesting. I found that was interesting. So something has touched them about their past. Maybe the expectations that they're going to be these fantastic fixers of other people, which you can't do unless you can fix yourself. So I think it goes very, very deep in doctors, I'm sure. And I have a lot of doctors as patients, and we have these conversations all the time.
Yeah, I understand.
Beautiful. I'm sorry. That's just so beautiful. Dr. Dan watches a lot. He's probably crying now. Sorry, Professor, what were you saying?
No, I was going to say I understand what you're saying, Robin, because when somebody, whether it be another doctor or another professional or an ordinary person off the street, when they come back and they say, I don't think about myself much anymore. I feel generous towards other people. This is something that swings people around when they really do discover themselves and they can get themselves healthy again. And it's like RFK Jr. says, a healthy person has hundreds of dreams, whereas an unhealthy person only has one. And, you know, it's so gratifying when somebody does feel better and honestly feels better and says, I feel generous. I want to give time away to other people. I want to do more and help. And I mean, it doesn't happen in mainstream medicine that much, but when you're working with nature and you're working with groups of people who understand what humanity is all about, and they're eating the right foods and they're not poisoning themselves with drugs and medicines and alcohol and sugar and all the other garbage, I mean, they feel better in themselves. You've done your job as a doctor. You've done your job as a physician. And that's where the rewards come. And I only wish more doctors, I mean, I had all my career was an enjoyable career. When I started, I thought it was going to be miserable, and I thought I'd be miserable as well. But you know, I mean, I can't even think about stopping what I'm doing, and I'm getting on.
I think there's something keeping you really alive. I just have a question. This is to, I actually want to go somewhere positive. Before I do, Dr. Kelly, are you getting any flack from like a New Zealand APRA for even talking to us or even discussing these issues? Are you getting any flack?
Look, I don't care if I did. I think they're fairly benign to me. They probably think I'm not doing anything that important. I don't know.
That's so wrong.
I've never really worried about that too much, because I'm really more worried about the people who are coming to see me. They satisfy me enough, and I don't know if a lot of them know what I'm talking about or really care. So no, I don't, honestly. I don't really worry about that.
My next question is more positive. This is going around to all three of you, actually, because when I first had Dr. Oost on the show, one of the things he said straight up, he goes, I'm sick of sick care. I want healthcare. And I think all three of you want it. And we as patients want it. So we've got the patients wanting to be treated by doctors like you. And we've got doctors like you wanting to do it and other doctors wanting to do it. So the real question is, how do we get there? How do we break out of this just profit-driven, pill-popping madness that we're in and actually get to being what doctors should do, which is healing human beings or just being there at their time of need, you know? I'll start with Professor Brighthope and then I'll come around you, Rob, and then I'll go down to the Oost.
Well, thanks for the question, Michael. It's a great question. It's something I've been thinking about for many, many, many years. How do we turn the system around? I think the advent of the HIV virus is one thing for me. It helped me to set up a whole range of things with regard to keeping HIV/AIDS patients alive. And then I learned how to treat cancers differently after that, because they were, cancer prone, and also slowing down their Alzheimer's disease because there was age-related dementia. And so I learned a lot. It was sort of like working in a surgeon working in the battlefield. That's where you learn, you know, and the anaesthetist, you know, how to relieve pain and fix up people in the battlefield. It was really a battle.
Yeah.
And I think the advent of this Wuhan virus has been a turning point for the medical profession. It will be eventually. It's been a turning point for many people in the public arena who have been made sick either by the vaccines or witnessed a loved one either being maimed or dying as a result of being vaccinated with the mRNA vaccines. And I think this is an opportunity now for us to keep talking and keep training and keep teaching and bring up the evidence that we have that we can actually help people. And we don't need to use vaccines and lockdowns and masks for infectious diseases, because we've got other ways of preventing these infectious diseases, and the public are becoming more and more aware of sunshine and vitamin D and vitamin C and zinc and now copper and the repurposed medicines, ivermectin, penbendazole, mebendazole. All of these things are helping people. People know about them. They ask for them. Your show and shows like yours, Michael, have to keep going and going and going. And we've got
You're doing one with Hoodie now. I congratulate you. Hoodie was bragging about it. So good on you. You know?
Was he? Yeah.
Yeah. We've been chatting all day. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah. Look, I've been busy with overseas visitors for the weekend and our wow this afternoon. I just don't know what's going on around the rest of the world. But thank you for that.
Before I move on to Robin, can I just ask you? Look, going back to the AIDS patients, they were completely leperized. I know they were. You know, people would have been terrified of it. What did they want from a doctor when they were approaching you as an AIDS patient? Was it just fix me, or did you actually just treat me as a human being? You know, what was the sort of thing? Because was there any fear in you of catching the AIDS as well?
In me?
That's to you, Professor. Yeah.
Oh,
when you talked about AIDS patients, dealing with AIDS patients, that was a war.
Oh, it was.
You
It
know?
was terrible because many doctors would not treat them. Surgeons wouldn't operate.
Yeah,
on
that's
them.
right.
You know, they were left out. They were like lepers. You know, it was incredible. It was an unbelievable time. I mean, I opened up another clinic for them. It was an intravenous nutrients clinic, plus all the other things that they needed. And it was incredible because at the time, many of them were sick enough to be admitted to hospital. They were in the Fairfield Infectious Disease Hospital. And those who wanted my help would discharge themselves from the hospital, come down, have their IVs, and then they go back to the hospital and readmit themselves. It was bizarre, absolutely bizarre.
Wow.
But, you know, some of them were told you have pneumocystis carinii pneumonia once. Okay, you survive that, you'll die the next time you get it. Well, you know, they didn't die. They came down, they had their intravenous vitamin C's and everything else, and they didn't die. And this bewildered the physicians at the infectious diseases hospital. They asked me to go and give them a talk. And you know what? I was chastised by some of the physicians there. You know, zinc doesn't work. What does zinc do? You know, they haven't got a clue about, and even back then, there was evidence that zinc was an important part of the human immune system. So it was, well, that was back in the days when we had medical boards where you could go before the medical boards and give them a lecture. And, you know, they'd punish you by smacking your wrist. Well, I ended up being threatened after writing a book about HIV, AIDS and vitamin C and so on, that I would lose my license. That, Paul, you may recall, was back in the days when there was justice in the courts in this country, because I won my case against the medical board. But now we don't have justice in our so-called democracy. We don't have justice. We have not seen that justice occur in the courts in this country. And I don't mind saying that I think the judicial system is corrupted.
We did see Dr. Kirk Moore have his malicious prosecution dropped just the other day. So, you know, in America, so you know, it's a precedent. They were threatening him with 35 years jail. You'd think maybe they would let Miley off for saving a life with ivermectin, and let Mark off for dealing with patients who were at wit's end and he, you know, and just being a doctor and dealing compassionately with a world that's gone mad. What worries me today is I understand the WHO is now king of Australia. They're just one fake away, public health emergency of international concern. So it's a fake spelled with a, from bringing in tyranny. And we've got a whole lot of asleep, delusional people at the helm. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, do I really give a shit if they feel good? If they're going to do, if they're on the brink of collaborating with phase 2 of tyranny, you know? So I'm impatient that the fuckers wake up. Honestly, they need to wake up and wake up about yeah. And you said about
it was the Attorney General in the US who turned that case around, wasn't it?
Mm.
Yes, Bondi. Yeah, she had the power to. There was an executive order ending, meant to end that sort of malicious prosecution and lawfare, but it did eventually kick in. Unfortunately, we don't have any advocate in Australia or perhaps New Zealand, I don't know, for freedom of speech, ending censorship, enabling full and informed consent, however the doctor understands it, without a third party government or agency in the same room judging them. I don't know.
I think we've got to find heroes within our own parliament. They're far and few between, but we do have some heroes there, and we have to get behind them and support them as much as we possibly can. Make sure that the public understand, if they know what's going on with our healthcare system, and the World Health Organization is going to determine what we get in the future when there is a public health emergency of international concern. I mean, I've called a fake just recently. The fake is, you know, obesity is one of them. Another fake. And I mean, we've got so many public health emergencies of international concern that it's basically the authorities are blind to what's going on in health. Really.
I just worry. I've just seen the UN Sustainable Development Goals, you know, and I see it as a Trojan horse to bring in full-blown, full-spectrum control of the land, sea, air, water, you know, whether you pass flatus or not, you know, it's going to be part of their monitoring. And I'm thinking bigger pictures. I'm wondering about. I struggle with synthetic versus natural care. You know, I think a lot of our illnesses in our society is like a nature deficiency, like your song. Robin, you know, always looking down at the screens and not being. A lot of the kids, I'm sure, suffer from nature deficiency syndrome. Nothing that throwing them in a boot camp for 10 days to fend for themselves wouldn't start to cure. But yeah, what do you think?
I'm just going to get back to Robin for a sec.
Yeah. Yep.
Just to finish the question, Robin, there's so many doctors I think would want to be like you. How can you change in your country? How could the system be changed if there's so much demand for it, even if people don't realize it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've just done a short video on this. It's only 5 minutes. It's a follow-up to my other videos on this. I'll summarize it because I've just got the script in front of me. But the first thing they've got to do is acknowledge that the present system is not working, that it's being dictated to by untrained politicians. And unfortunately, so-called academic doctors who, again, don't seem to connect with the system. And it seems to be a lot of those doctors go into these fields because they don't necessarily relate to patients particularly well. So they actually get their kicks elsewhere. And the services that we're given aren't getting to the roots of people's problems. They're knee-jerk reactions. all you can do in a few minutes is a knee-jerk reaction, and doctors got to veer away from this.
Can you give an
They've got
example of that? Is that like if you've got a headache, take a Panadol, the headache lasts 3 days, keep taking, if instead of going, why have you had a headache for 3 days?
Yeah, because all the drugs that doctors use, allopathic drugs, have anti in front of them. They're antibiotics, they're antidepressants, they're anti-anxiety, anti-anti. We're just up the ante. What we're doing probably in our practices is actually look at the root cause, and then actually getting to the root cause, either eliminating environmental effects or really see sort of harmonizing relationships that they're having with people. So we should be stopping just becoming this alien dialectic of reacting to the problem. This is not going to go away, and it's actually one of the reasons why we have bad health at the moment. Then the next thing is that they've got to work out how they're going to do this, because they will realize if they're seeing less people, they won't earn so much money initially, but they have to work out how best to do that. For instance, the practice I have, I'm working with my wife, who's a nurse and practitioner. It's just us, because we worked out that's what people want. They don't want lots of they don't want a lot of administrators or other people. We have to identify that people's needs are very profound, but they're also fairly simple. They want to talk to somebody and get the right advice. They're coming from me, they're coming from a wife. Now, other people won't be able to do that necessarily, but they have to understand how they can trim it down so that they can provide that service economically, because they do have to survive.
But Dr. Robin, a whole room of bureaucrats will be unemployed with your plan.
Absolutely. They'll come to see me as patients, probably. They also have to invest in new skills. In the 1980s, 400 doctors did acupuncture in New Zealand. As soon as this new system came up, everybody stopped. And they said, well, why should we do this? We're earning money. We're earning our money without actually doing this. And that happened. So the people stopped manipulating, stopped delivering babies, stopped doing all these other things that actually they were interested in, and they became just prescribers. So they have to work out where their passion lies. Is it nutrition, fitness, lifestyle advice, trauma work, meditation, something that actually aligned with their personality? Because once you do that, you remember it and you're passionate and you enjoy doing your job. You're not doing something that you don't enjoy. And you don't expect other agencies to pay for this. You have to pay for it yourself. And once you do that, you remember the stuff. So many GPs go on courses because they have to have tick boxes so that they get their certain number of points so that they can practice the next year. But they're not passionate about that at all. They're not passionate. So they have to decide the minimum amount of time they spend with somebody, and they work with a patient and they work around that. Okay, that is the basic. They have to spend time with people. They must opt out of any third-party connections, whether they're insurance companies, corporations, accident schemes, government schemes, or whatever. They have to have the confidence to say, when our job is important, if these people want to get on board, they can do so independently. But this is a contract between me and the person coming to see me. That is all I'm interested in, and all these other agencies. Otherwise, you become just a form filler. And once you do that, you become totally, it's soul destroying being a form filler all the time. You have to value your own experience. You've seen lots of people. I've been doing it for 50 years. If you've been doing it for 10 years, you've seen thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. Honor that. You are a person with great experience, and respect yourself for that. And so the bottom line is you become the patient's advocate. You treat their needs individually, I'm reading this, and uniquely. You guide them at their own pace. You refer them only to other health professionals and specialists who treat them with equal respect. If they have a serious illness, you help build a skilled, compassionate team around them. That can include friends, it can include neighbors, but especially if they're alone. So I find my job is really there, getting a team around who all have the same intent for this person, but they may have different skills. And this way, I don't know, this seems to work for me. and I think hopefully for people coming to see me.
What do you think, guys? I think it sounds great.
Yeah,
Let's
look, look. You get what you pay for, and what you fund, and to some extent what you measure. You know, your KPIs and all that. There are all these subtle nudges to produce a certain type of outcome and a certain type of practice. And obviously, you step out of that, but you know, who's paying for it? It's different when a patient is paying for it. And I found that for most of my years of practice, I was on a paid by the hospital, so I didn't. It was in the later years when I was a senior specialist and I was acting as a independent specialist. You know, there's always this hard question of, well, what are you worth? Well, it should be worth something, all those years of, but people don't. We've been trained in Australia with Medicare which started just a few years before I started as an intern. The perception is it's free. The care is free, and whether you call the person a massage therapist, a doctor, a plumber, or a barrister, you pay for those skills and that experience. But the system has become a government-funded thing. I mentioned corporate because we're in the corporate structure, and that affects the thinking. But I think we're talking about things that go beyond the dollars, but unfortunately we live in this structure that we can't even see. It's like the water all around us, of incentives and financial structures, and it drives behaviour, including for the doctors. So that's the conundrum. People have to understand that they want the service, but like every service, it has to be funded.
I think we're in a. Sorry,
Go on, Robin.
we're in a very critical time. I was listening to a seminar today on transhumanism, and that this is happening at the moment. That in fact, the plans are, and they come from pretty well every university, every scientific agency, every royal society, that human beings are insufficient, our immune systems are insufficient and need help from technology. And I believe the last 5 years of the mRNA was a portal for that to happen. This was the stepping stone to get people on board for this transhumanism. And this is happening at the moment. And it's happening very rapidly. And there's a great division between what I see as humanity and what is being planned. And I think the important thing is, are we going to be an advocate for humans and humanity, or are we going to be just somebody who's going to push the transhuman agenda, the bioengineering, the idea that we need to be enhanced through technology? And are we going to be just players in that game? Or are we going to actually be the supporters of humanity? And if we decide we're going to be supporters of humanity, there's a huge role for us, I think, in the future. Otherwise, I think we're in a very dangerous situation. And I'm convinced this is happening. It's not just happening in 2030. It's happening now. It's happening now. And the push is for that is the way medicine's going to be going. Gene splicing, CRISPR, all that stuff, which I believe doesn't have a basis in good science. It actually is somehow delusional that this can change the human being into something that's better. Without really, most people are pushing for that, don't seem to have an understanding of what it is to be human in the first place.
They think the AI fantasy that the AI comes up with is reality. And one of the things I struggle with is the idea that simulations are now so good that you don't need to do preclinical testing, or you don't need to launch a rocket to see if, because the simulation did it. It didn't blow up in the simulation, so it's not good. And we've got this moment of hubris where you're thinking, wow, things are moving so fast. Maybe it's true. Maybe they can deliver a personalized genetic injection just for you. And you've got to be open to the miracles. But I just know humans and the hubris, and I can think of 100 different ways it's going to go terribly wrong. And so you always got to balance risk versus benefit. And I worry that the motivations have not been good. And if your motivation is not good, then you won't get a good outcome from any of this. Does that make sense? I thought you'd seen my tweets about SV40 and integration today, Dr. Robin, because I've been talking about the potential for integration from the COVID shots for a while, and it appears to be a real thing. And at some point, we're going to have to actually have an honest discussion about, okay, what the fuck does this really mean for our species? And are they going to lord it over, the patent holders? Are they coming back for your offspring or some share of your production? Because I'm just putting on my conspiracy theory hat, but it's not conspiracy theory because they've told you that that's their plan. And the point about the CRISPR that I've been mentioning because of the sequences in the codon optimization, that it's just like it couldn't have happened by chance. And all these different spike proteins are all spelt in such a way to have a CRISPR anchor point. And I've started to see evidence of industries starting to sprout. So you can see where this is going. This is why they haven't pulled this toxic and dangerous product. Meanwhile, we continue to give this to kids and pregnant. Well, I think they don't recommend it for healthy pregnant women now. Is that right, Prophet?
I didn't think you could vaccinate someone who was sick. Professor, you've spent so many years, the same with Robin, and all of you really, but you've spent so many years taking your own path to studying the human condition. So when you're watching Google come out and say, we've got this app now, AI app, better than any doctor and stuff like this, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are, guys, that we can use the tools that they're developing to our advantage in the long run. And Kevin McKernan has come across to doing the genetics of cannabis, and I'm very much involved in cannabis and love cannabis, but because it plays a very important role on our system called the endocannabinoid system. But Kevin McKernan was the guy who basically decoded the DNA, and we know what our human DNA looks like now. Now, the DNA that we have is responsive to epigenetic effects. Just thinking, relaxing can have an epigenetic effect. It can influence the way our genes express themselves. We know that there are nutraceuticals that can actually repair DNA or help the DNA's enzymes repair our DNA. We have methylating agents we know can influence the expression of our genes. So there are trillions of different chemicals and trace elements and other molecules in nature that can interact with our DNA. And I believe when we've got the best and biggest supercomputers doing all of this transhumanizing stuff, we can actually turn that around and say, okay, Michael, you're suffering from this, that, and the other thing. This is your genome, and we're not going to give you an injection. We're not going to give you a drug, as Bill Gates would do at a certain age. We're going to make sure that you take enough of this garlic, this curcumin, this turmeric, and this copper or this selenium, so you don't get heart disease or you don't get cancer, or you're going to optimize your intelligence. So I think that is the purest way of moving forward with these with these technologies that are being advanced and developed. And I hope I live long enough to see something like this. But I know that I was playing nutrigenomics, I was playing epigenetics a long time ago when I was giving patients with dysplasias, vitamins and minerals and so on to reverse their dysplasia and prevent a cancer, whether it be a dysplasia in the large bowel or the cervix or the lungs, you know, and solar keratosis and so forth, actually reversing them and curing them without using drugs. So we can sophisticate and develop these approaches along the lines of this, providing we have the money to do it. And we've got to stop the government and the pharmaceutical industry from stealing our money via our taxes and these synthetic pandemics that they like to think up. We have to start taking some of the value in our country and owning it ourselves, not allowing the money that is from this very wealthy country to flow up to the bureaucrats and the expensive individuals who like to fly around the world in their own jets. I mean, we've got to do something about the Bill Gates syndrome because we don't want more Bill Gates in this world. We want fewer Bill Gates. We want people with the money to do the right thing. And you know, Michael, I see people who can't even afford a decent meal. They've been jab injured, badly jab injured. And, you know, you go and raise some money for them so that they can buy some nutrients or some repurposed medications to get better again. These poor people, I mean, these are the people who have suffered the most under the hand.
We have chosen to forget them because they don't click the safe and effective narrative. They disturb that, so we forget them. Yeah. I commend you for what, you know, we have one lady that we both tried to help. Tragic. Robin, can I just ask you, after all this time you've spent too with the body and studying the human body, are you still learning? Or is there still things where you come across and just amazes you about the body, which goes against how they're trying to push how we're basically unfinished, imperfect, and they got to fix us up with their shite. But are you still getting
I live in a state of wonder and awe all the time.
Wow, really? Could you explain give an example?
Well, it's really the last 40 years. When I studied Chinese medicine, they view traditional Chinese medicine that the body is energetic first. And in fact, the matter appears on the energy, if you like. And then I started to study Ayurvedic medicine. I started to meditate. I started to investigate what this thing consciousness was. And I have certainly veered to the side that we are filters of consciousness. There's fields of consciousness. There's a field of consciousness which we filter down into this an understanding of the world around us, something far, far greater. And in fact, you discover that when you do get into meditation, that's when you can become more creative. And in fact, you know, I'm sure, Michael, you agree, if you're going to create, you tend to get into a quiet space, an open space, and receive. You don't have, in fact, the more chatter you have in your brain, the better, the less chatter there is, the better, so that you become, and that's when you feel things flow through you. And I suppose that when I started to go through that sort of understanding of, I suppose, the universe and beyond, you never stop being in a sense of awe and wonder. And you go away from thinking that we're basically meat packages. And you understand the importance of something called love, and healing. And those are things almost been taken away from the doctor's discussion. I've had many people that I've struggled to help But I've seen them 10 years later in the supermarket and they've looked great. And I said, well, what's happened to you? You know, it was a really struggle with your health. Well, I met so-and-so and my life's turned around, you know. And so I'm always in that state of awe and wonder that there's so much that we have to learn. And my concern with this whole transhumanism thing and biotech is that they seem to really know so little. They don't even know what they don't know. For instance, the Human Genome Project, very exciting though it is, have only really discovered 6% of the human genome. The rest they say is junk. Well, the rest is an environment that's connected to a wide greater environment, which we say the epigenetics. And so they're using, so the emperor really has no clothes, and it's potentially very dangerous when people the very few people that are promoting this at the really top level, providing all the funds for all this, know so little. They don't have, I suppose, an understanding of what I think humanity is, or a deeper meaning to our lives. They seem to want to live forever. And if they do, of course, we can't all live forever. So a lot of us will have to go. The useless eaters will have to disappear from the earth to allow it to be safe.
Speak for yourself, Dr. Robin. I'm going to live forever.
I know. And
just not as this meat package. This is temporary, you know.
Well, I think we're trained to be people who look after meat packages, and you know, even I look after a lot of people who are coming to the end of their lives, and I do a lot of terminal care, and there's a process that happens where people do not feel as depressed often as the oncologists who are looking after them. They're actually going through a process, and many of them are reassuring the oncologists who say, I'm afraid this, and you know, you've only got 5 or 6 months or whatever. They haven't even asked them if they have a perception of consciousness actually outliving their physical bodies. Now, whether you believe that or not, it's a question that should be asked and should be discussed and should be honored, for instance. My
experience was that we did death really badly in this culture, and in the hospitals. You know, we do have really funny ideas about it. It was I especially when, you know, this is the whole thing about not for resuscitation. It can be times that it's compassionate. You know, death is like birth it's a precious time, and it's you want to handle it well. I don't think our culture handles it, the way it's medicalized, the way it's artificialized, the way it's there's, you know, I was watching a interview on Diary of a CEO. This is Roger Salt. Now I don't agree with him on all things, but I have respect for him because he of his MedCram episode 34, where he talked about zinc and zinc ionophores, hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine, back in March, I think, 2020. So I have a soft spot for him, and now he's talking about light. And light, and of course he's right. It goes beyond vitamin D. He's talking about mitochondrial function and you know, stimulating melatonin intramitochondrially. You know, really fascinating stuff. There's all sorts of things we can. I feel medicine is shifting. The big theme in my mind, in part, is natural versus synthetic, centralized versus decentralized care. And my preference, without knowing the particulars, for any question, is: can we do this in a decentralized way, and can we do this in a way that vibes with nature? And I think if we keep asking this question over and over again, we might actually get things that actually work, and may actually work better than in the big cathedrals of allopathy. Because frankly, they're killing so many people, they can't do worse. You know, apart from some acute care that they're relatively, you know, they're competent for usually. You know, So anyway, those are my general things. I don't have the answer, but I suspect the answer is going to be something that empowers individuals in the community. But people like you gents are rare gems, and I wish there were more of doctors like you, but it's going to be slim pickings. I'm sorry, guys. You're going to have to be more self-reliant.
Yeah, I'm still saying that doctors out there are bad. I think they're caught in the system, like what Dr. Kelly says. But it's so lovely to hear the both of you, Professor and Dr. Kelly, speak. It's just like almost listening to a world either we lost or a world where we want to reach, but we're not actually there yet. You know what I mean? It's really lovely what you're saying. I wanted to, where you mentioned about love, Dr. Kelly. I've interviewed lots of nurses who went through the time where people weren't allowed into nursing homes to see their relatives, and people weren't allowed into hospitals to see the relatives, even as they were dying. And they were saying these people didn't need medical care; they needed love. They needed just their family people. They needed people who loved them there, and we didn't allow that to happen. And that's like an unspoken tragedy of these last of that vicious time. You know what I mean? It's beautiful.
It's appalling. It
was
totally appalling. It's appalling. It's inhumane. It's gobsmacking inhumane.
It's a source of trauma. It's a source of trauma. I actually wonder whether, I frame COVID in one sense like a mass psychiatric or psychotraumatic event. And I remember talking to one of my psychologist friends about, how do we deal with a mass casualty? It's sort of a mass mental or psychic casualty event. And I wondered whether we should be thinking out of the box, with things like psilocybin or hallucinogens. I suspect, and remember that can go all the way down to microdosing, to full therapeutic controls, or even almost religious ceremonies, because it's got a long historical context. What are your views about that?
Me? No, I think it could have gone that way in the 70s. Obviously, it had a bad rap after the 60s, where people took these things, but their egos got in the way, if you like. And of course, then Big Pharma came in and we had the antidepressants. But what it appears to be with those, with psilocybin and ayahuasca, is that it actually draws you out of this three-dimensional reality, and it allows you to escape and look down on your present situation and in fact put it into context. And so those are, as you say, the shamanic rituals, but they were guided by the elders. So in other words, the important thing is not just those natural products, but it actually is those who are overseeing it have to be surrounded with common sense and compassion, because it can be pretty scary for the people. And it seems to be the most effective way if people are going to cure their addictions, particularly heroin addictions. Iboga has been used for that. So you can, I think
that's what I heard. For addiction, there's nothing that comes close, that I've seen, and for depression, I suspect it's going to have far less morbidity and side effects, and the junk that they're putting out now. Sorry, Professor, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, with regard to the psychedelics, they are a next step when other things have failed. And when we're talking about addictions, there are some nutraceuticals that are very effective in helping patients with addictions. For example, intravenous NAD plus can stop an addict almost in their tracks. Not always. They've got to have other things being addressed, of course, their diet and their exercise and meditation, etc., and their social surroundings. But I've witnessed over many decades, because back in the good old days when I had hospital patients, we would allow those who were coming off heavy drugs like heroin and alcohol, for example, we would allow them to go to the back of the hospital. It was a private hospital, and they used to take their marijuana and smoke their marijuana. To me, I understood that then, not as a gateway drug, but as an exit drug from these others. And if you make sure that the patient's biochemistry is optimized with things like magnesium and the amino acids and so on, and essential fatty acids, then you can take them through that process to good health. And one of the things that we've found recently, since it's been legalized in Australia, is medicinal cannabis, not using THC, but using the other cannabinoids. It is an unbelievable substance in terms of getting the population healthy again. We've seen patients coming off 2 or 3 different synthetic opioids, antidepressants, tranquilizers, hypnotics, the whole range of things. And they've been able to do it themselves in many instances. So we're now discovering a whole range of other cannabinoids, not just THC and CBD, but CBG, CBN, CBD. Some of them have an effect, like Ozempic, for example. We're looking at some very interesting cannabinoids now. The entire plant, in its context, if it's given in its correct context, it is like what has been termed the sacred plant, because it is almost like a sacred plant if it's used properly. Smoking it is toxic. No, you don't smoke it. If you want to
say that. I like my joints.
You had Michael on board up until that point.
You've got some good enzymes there, Michael. And no, for you, it's okay. But I think if we're looking at this from a chemical energy perspective, then the cannabinoids have some extremely powerful properties and help people enormously. I mean, I've seen somebody in a wheelchair with MS who couldn't walk get out of the wheelchair after 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's because the energetics.
God, that's a great story to share, wouldn't it?
I mean, we've got videos of it. I mean, the energetics is amazing. Is phenomenal.
Yeah. We just have a question here. It's for you, Professor. But I think anyone can. But I don't know the legalities of you offering advice at this, so I don't want to get any of you in trouble, because APRA loves nothing more than transcribing these shows. You know what I mean? Which is my son's partner has stage 4 bowel cancer. Would you please advise him about a cure to follow and how and where to get it? So yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, contacting an integrative medicine doctor, either in New Zealand or Australia. There is an integrative medicine association, and just Google. I can't treat anybody. I'm retired. I can give the doctor's direction, and I'm happy to do that, but I'm not. And when I say direction, I'm not treating patients. I'm helping the doctor with particular patients, but by educating the doctors. So I have to be very careful.
I don't know if Adela saw our last our interview with Dr. William Mackus last week. He's got a Substack. You can go have a look. He publishes and writes about the research of the latest trials that are being done, and he gets lots of testimonials too being sent around the world. Now, that's not randomized, double-blind controlled data, but there is so many. There's so much smoke there that I suspect there's quite a lot of fire. So I when it comes to cancer, I direct people to Dr. Paul Merrick's monograph, because it's like 80 pages. It's got hundreds of references, and you can almost look up any. There it is. Yeah, you can like someone says, "Oh, glioma." Someone says glioma, and then you can find up all the studies where they had used things for, and of course it's quite holistic, as you would know, Prof. That the diet is probably the first thing, that they deal with, because it's about the metabolic origins of cancer. So cancer's been topical for us.
I just have to do a duty of care to Dr. Kelly because it's 10:30 now, and I know you go to bed early. Are you okay? You're
I'm revived by this. Thank you.
Just checking. Just checking. Just go.
I do have a question though. Go
ahead.
I'd love to put to Ian and Paul. I've been doing student health for 20 years, and obviously the issues I'm dealing with are mostly mental health. However, the last 5 years have seen an explosion in the prescription, not just of antidepressants, but ADHD medication, particularly, which are amphetamines. And I have students who are going on these to pass their exams and stopping them in the holidays when they're working in a bar or whatever. I have a lot of concerns about this. They do feel better and they pass their exams, but they are amphetamines, and they're also toxic, and they're also cardiotoxic. And now it's got to such a point that the psychiatrists are referring people back to me to do full cardiological examinations on these people before they prescribe it. In other words, they're passing the buck to me to do this. And with other, I suppose, interventions for the last 5 years are also cardiotoxic. I'm concerned about that. But I'm more concerned that we're treating something that is a sociological condition with long-term drugs again. It seems to be that you can focus the left brain, and the left brain, when it's totally focused, can follow instructions and orders a lot better. And I have to see parallels with what happened in Nazi Germany, where a big percentage of the population were given something called Pervitin, which was methamphetamine. In fact, it wasn't just for the soldiers at the front, at the Eastern Front. It was also those, what they were called housewives in those days, who took them in chocolate so they could finish they could whistle while they did their housework. So I have huge concerns about so many people going on long-term low-dose amphetamines. And I'm about the only voice I know who is concerned about this, because now GPs have been given the right to do this. So we're seeing an explosion of this without any great discussion with the person about why this is happening, or even within the profession about why we have this need out there. Certainly and so I wondered if anybody else on the panel here has a disquiet about this. And of course they're amphetamines, so people do feel better on them. Ian, do you have any comments on this?
Well, absolutely, Robin. I mean, when I was working with psychiatrists, we were trying to take people off a lot of these medications and drugs, and we used to give IV nutrients to balance their nutrient status, and we get basically somebody who's craving something or needs a chemical to satisfy a need has got a deficiency of something or an excess of something else, and an excess of sugar or caffeine or anything out there in their diet that could be disturbing their metabolism and their metabolic machinery, and the biochemistry is disturbed. Quite often we find that they are deficient in common minerals like magnesium or zinc, which are so important for central nervous system functioning. Experimental zinc deficiencies in the American Army, in the American forces, and they actually induced psychotic states in the soldiers by putting them on a zinc deficient diet. Zinc plays a very, very important role, not only in the immune system, but in the hippocampus and parts of the brain where we have emotions, memory, and so on. The same with magnesium. During winter, our magnesium levels drop. So that we end up with a magnesium deficiency depression. So it comes back to the foods that we're eating and what we may need to supplement ourselves to correct a deficiency. And this is where our profession misses out. And we reach for the prescription pad and prescribe a chemical like an amphetamine to make people feel better. But if they got some sunshine, some vitamin D also plays a very important role here as well. These are the nutraceuticals and nutrition and exercise. Exercise deficiency state is another thing that I talk about, because exercise deficiency can make people feel terrible and lousy. And it doesn't take very much to get people feeling better. Even just 7 minutes of Tai Chi or Qigong a day helps your energy. I mean, you talk about the meridians in traditional Chinese medicine. You know, the movement that you're doing, it can actually make you feel better. And it doesn't take pounding down the footpath to make you feel better. You energize yourself by doing that and going out into the sunshine and standing on the wet grass. These are the lifestyle tricks that we who are informed follow to keep ourselves well. And if you have a lot of sugar and chocolate in your diet, you're going to have blood sugar swings that are going to make you feel great. And then all of a sudden, you got the downer because the blood sugar's gone down, and out pumps the adrenaline to make you bring your blood sugar back up again. And the adrenaline makes you feel nervous and palpitations and everything else. You know, we can correct these deficiencies and these excesses. And that's where we as primary care physicians can play a very, very important role.
I think we need to control for the blue light exposure, like in your song, Robin, about everyone's looking down. That's something that's different in you know, the kids of the recent generations. We weren't exposed to this artificial blue light, the stimulation, the apps, the likes, the social media stuff.
The scrolling, the dopamine hits, the dopamine after dopamine.
And the more you do it, the more depressed and anxious you get. And then you self-medicate with. But I remember hearing stories of how in Nazi Germany they used sometimes quite large doses of amphetamine, and it you know, we know it's this gets back to my comment earlier about nature deficiency, but also excess of artificial attention, and that links in with your comments on meditation earlier, because really meditation is, as I was taught, a state of non-judgmental awareness. It's very hard to be aware if you're constantly being distracted, and you know, you've got these devices trying to constantly grab your attention, constantly all day long. So to think everything's going to be treated with a pill is part of what we all can see as ridiculous, you know, and it'll be seen that way when sanity returns. But in the meantime, a lot of our kids and family members are popping speed, and it's normal. It won't be seen as normal, I'm sure, in a few years' time, but it's part of the madness, and you know, I sit back and watch.
I saw somebody a couple of weeks ago, and she was heading a team who are developing an AI computer game or whatever. She was the head of 10 people, and they're all taking ADHD medication. And if they are in fact sort of working with AI and focusing like that, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, I totally agree with Ian, and I will, but unfortunately, they are being sold this. They are being sold this now by the medical profession as the answer, and it's a quick answer to their issues. How do I get around it? I don't want to deny them if it's going to pass. They're going to pass their exams, but I actually do have a discussion about these the long-term issues, and also, whether they are better served using their creativity and their attention issues in a different way. Maybe we're forcing them into doing something with their lives that isn't going to be giving them the ultimate balance and love and respect that they have for themselves in the long run. But that's my concern. So I'm just voicing my concern about that.
It's a shortcut. It's a shortcut, but it's lazy, and that's what you get when you have 7-minute medicine.
Yeah.
That's how you solve complex problems in 7 minutes.
Mm.
Do you also think with the 7 minutes, something that can heal someone is that a doctor will give them time to make them feel like they have some worth and they're not just the next sheep in line getting ready to have their, you know, be jabbed or whatever. They're actually listening. Because I know my father has a great joke. Oh, I've got to tell you this first. He told me this morning. My father is 87 years old, but he's sharp as a whip, but he's very healthy, and he cares for my mum, who's got Parkinson's. And the water board called him up and said, we're no longer issuing you paper bills. You're going to have to basically access your bill online. And he told them, the only thing I do online is hang up my wife's knickers. Sorry, I just thought that was a pearl. But where was I going with that? Sorry,
Can I just cut in there, Robin?
I'll just finish this. Sorry, Professor. He takes her to see the cardiologist, and he tells me this is it. He goes in. They have 6 minutes. He says 3 minutes of that is my mum complimenting the doctor's new cardigan, and then it's just boom, boom, boom out. And he says it's like $400, $500. And I just wish that what my mum actually wants is someone to give her more time to say, look, you're old. Yes, you're old. Yes, you're in your 80s, but you've had kids. You've had a life. You've got this, and you're worthy of our time. So we're going to give you, like you said, Dr. Kelly, we're going to give you half an hour. I would adore my mum to have half an hour, and I'm sure my mum's mental and physical health would improve if she just didn't feel like she was just being shot through on a conveyor belt.
Yeah. I have years ago an 11-year-old who had come from Kampuchea, Cambodia in those days, had arrived in New Zealand, and about a month after he arrived with his family, his father died of an asthma attack. Anyway, this guy was bright, went to school, lost his father, and developed a terrible tic. And his grandmother brought him in for me to use acupuncture on his tic, which he was being teased for. And I purposely didn't want to stick pins into this young boy's face. So he sat down, and I didn't at that stage know that his father had died, but we talked about that. And the sessions were simply this. I said, what's your passion? And he said, I'm a tap dancer. This is what I love doing. And I said, well, I'm a terrible dancer. Could you teach me to tap dance? And so the sessions that we had, he taught me to tap dance, which I did as a dad dance, you know, sort of like that. And by the third session, his tic had gone. And he said, look, I can't tell my grandmother what's happening. She's thinking I'm having acupuncture. I said, well, just say we're talking about it and everything. So presumably I took the place of his father, who he would probably wanted to show that he could tap dance. And I had a lot of fun doing that. That was one. And the other person was at the end of a hard day.
That's our short. Thanks, Dr. Kelly. That's one of our shorts for tonight. That's beautiful, man.
And the other thing is, at the end of a hard day, somebody came in and she had terrible migraines. And I was feeling tired and I just burst into tears. And because I heard this story and she was suffering, but a lot of it was, I'm completely stuffed. And then she came back about 2 weeks later. He said, from that moment, my migraines disappeared. And I mean, I was crying because I was completely knackered as well. But I was probably just honestly expressing some emotion that something tipped me, you know, from that.
Yeah.
Did you get a migraine? Did you get a migraine?
Yeah, I got a headache. I just retired at the end.
No, I mean, there is a practice of taking on someone's suffering.
Yeah, Tonglen, isn't
and
it?
to some extent, Tonglen, yeah, and to some extent, doctors can do that sometimes. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, You don't have to be a doctor to do that. It's
And a lot of the
it doesn't usually lead to a headache.
And a lot of the time when we don't treat people, if we just say, look, let's leave it a week. If you really know the person, say, I'll give you a call in a week. I don't think anything I can do will make you better, but I think you're going to get better in a week. And you give them a call. That's often an amazing intervention, because people are tempted to do too much. They want to prescribe, they want to refer, rather than just wait. If you have the confidence to wait, as long as you have contact with that person, that can be very powerful.
I think it's very easy for people want people to give their doctor to give a damn. They want attention and love. You know, they want to matter. They want to be seen as precious.
And AI is going to do that so well.
And AI is going to, I don't know, pretend to do it, but will it be?
Well, it'll help us stop thinking.
That's the problem.
Professor was going to say something, but I snuck in. What were you going to finish after I said about my dad and the washing line? Was it a funny thing, or was there something else?
Who, me?
No, Professor. He was going to say something.
Well, you know me, Michael and Paul. I can't do something like this without saying one thing, and that is, human beings are deficient in a particular nutrient that comes from blood sugar called glucose, and glucose is converted in every plant and animal on the face of this earth into a thing called ascorbic acid. And the only animals that can't do it are human beings and the higher apes and the guinea pig. And we are walking around completely deficient or insufficient with regard to vitamin C. And every patient who came to see me would have their white blood cell vitamin C levels done, and they were all low, insufficient. And when you brought their vitamin C levels up to the top level, they would all feel better. Whether we cured the disease or not was irrelevant, but they would feel better. So we do need, when we're under stress, to have high levels of ascorbic acid, especially in our white blood cells, which is basically the immune system. It's also reflective of what goes on in the cardiac muscle and the brain as well.
Strange that the body doesn't make it, though.
We don't make it. We can't make it. If we were doing,
it's strange that we don't. If we need it, strange.
It's an evolutionary thing. It's got something to do with it's a teleological. I mean, the argument about it can go on and on and on, but we have lost the two enzymes through our process of evolution, coming out of the jungle or whatever we did, coming out of the trees, and we developed other redox systems or antioxidant systems that are very, very powerful. But when we're under stress or living in a polluted environment or eating rotten food and all of these other things, surgery, trauma, stress, drugs, medicines, alcohol, our vitamin C levels drop down. And if we don't...
They'll have a CRISPR solution. You know, whales apparently can still produce vitamin C. So they get the gene, CRISPR it in, and we'll be like our whales. We'll be able to produce our own vitamin. I don't know if it works. I'm not saying it'll work that way. For all I know, there's a totally different thing. But you can just see it happening, can't you?
Yeah, I can. But I prefer to have our berries and nuts and seeds and all of those things with the flavonoids in them, and that makes the vitamin C work better. But you know, I thrive on 4 grams of vitamin C a day. If I don't have it, I get a frown, I get a grey complexion, I get aches and pains, and I get miserable. But you know, on 4 grams a day,
which is terribly hard when you have your name. I think, oh, Professor Brighthope, what do you want?
I mean, I'm going to be serious here. When somebody goes in for chemotherapy or radiotherapy or surgery, if their levels of vitamin C are low, all of those therapies are going to put stress on their antioxidant mechanisms, on their redox systems. And that's why we end up with patients getting worse. So we've got to make sure we get those levels back up so that our white blood cells, our killer cells, our helper cells in the immune system function properly. and it's not hard to do, and it's very cheap. And all of those people that you were talking about before, Dr. Robin, they should be on vitamin C, and if they did feel better, they may be able to reduce the other things. It's the most important supplement that I can think of in terms of not only keeping people alive and well, but actually saving lives. And there are a couple of cases I've been involved in where patients have been on ECMO. One in Auckland in New Zealand, you probably are aware of it. He was going to be switched off after 6 weeks on ECMO, and we got him off. 30 grams he was given, and in 3 days his lungs started showing some aeration, and he's still alive today. So it's such an important nutrient that I think any cancer patient who has chemotherapy, radiotherapy, or surgery who is not given high dose IV vitamin C is being treated in a negligent fashion.
Yeah. Of course, it was the Poms that discovered it, wasn't it? The Limeys, that was these were the sailors, that went to the West Indies, and the only ones that didn't get scurvy were the ones that ate that sucked the lime on the way back. But it took didn't it take 100 years before the medical profession sort of came on board with that, didn't it?
It took 40 years after Lynn discovered it on the HMS Salisbury that the limes would stop the sailors from dying. It took 40 years for the British Admiralty to adopt it and thus increase the fighting force of the British Admiralty by a factor of 2.5 to 3 times its fighting force, because it didn't have to bring six sailors back to shore. It's a fascinating story. Fascinating story.
I've always wondered, though, I often read stories of people lost at sea. I'm always really fascinated by, they get lost in a raft for a couple of 100 days or 90 days. They don't seem to get scurvy much. I always wonder why that was the case.
Not long enough.
You do get scurvy after 55 days on a vitamin C deficient diet. So if they're out after that period of time, if they're catching fish and eating fish, then there are compensatory mechanisms. But leading up to those 55 days, there are signs of aches and pains and feeling tired all the time and miserable, like most of the people who are walking around. We do have some profound other systems that work in favour of being an antioxidant, and these systems are oxidase enzymes and reductase enzymes, glutathione peroxidase and superoxidase dismutase. They're all fancy names, but they are all dependent on copper, zinc, manganese, and selenium, the cofactors for these enzymes. And so many people are walking around with deficiencies of these trace elements or insufficiencies of these trace elements that their antioxidant enzymes don't work as well as they should. So, the redox systems or reduction oxidation systems in our bodies are so important for us to feel and be well. Selenium is one of these things that, if it's deficient, may result in cancer. Copper deficiencies result in inflammatory disorders because we don't have the oxidase enzymes and a thing called ceruloplasmin, which is a copper-containing protein that is one of the first phase respondents in tissue trauma. Back in the 1980s and early 1990s, the National Cancer Institute and National Institutes of Health were talking about its time for action when it came to these micronutrients. Gladys Block was talking about it and published in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute, I think it was. William Block did a study in northwestern China on 29,000 subjects over a period of 5 years, giving 4 groups 3 different nutrients, and one of the groups reduced the gastrointestinal cancer incident mortality rate by 26% on very small doses of beta-carotene, selenium, and vitamin E. These micronutrients are profoundly effective, and they help, as Dr. Robin was talking about before, with our energy mechanisms, with our mitochondrial function, and it saves powerhouses of our cells from burning themselves out. You know, the mitochondria are the energy factories in the cells, and there are thousands of them in every cell, tens of thousands. They're basically pumping out free radicals all the time, which need to be mopped up, and that's what the vitamin E and the vitamin C does. But you know, we forget about these basic things that are present in our nutrient-rich foods. You know, I mean, you function up here better if you're not producing reactive oxygen species. If you feel lousy up here, it possibly is because there's something going wrong in your gut and there's rubbish coming up into your brain, but you've also got to clean your brain out. So, I mean, there's a lymphatic system, like the lymphatic system, that works very well if you're well hydrated, you're well nourished, you've got a clean gut, and you do some exercise and you get out some sunshine. And as Dr. Paul said before, I mean, there's nothing like light to keep us healthy. You know, all the things that go with vitamin D.
I hate to say this, I hate to interrupt you all, but my solar battery is bleeping, so I live in a bus, so I'm just about to go into the darkness. I think the transhumanism thing is a story for another show. But what it sounds like you've got a lot of very excited, very super confident toddlers about to go in and start finger painting the Mona Lisa to make it better. And it's really scary. But we're just starting to get some power in. But I probably will call it a day. Dr. Kelly, thank you for coming on again. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and wisdom with us. Always, it's gorgeous to have Professor Brighthope on, but it's really gorgeous to see you both interacting, and the same with Dr. Oosthuis as well. But it's lovely to know that there's doctors out there who actually want to take us back to what it is to be, what we feel doctors should be. There's hope in that. There's hope. And I'm hoping to any other doctors watching, we've got a lot of people watching, that there's other doctors out there who go, yeah, I want to be that. I want to do that. Yeah, I really do. But to let you go to the finish, is there anything you'd like to say to take us out? I'll go around. Dr. Kelly, anything else before we play your song to finish?
No, look, just to thank you for this, and thank you for doing this an hour earlier. As it's 11 o'clock, mate. And I've been really honoured. It was lovely talking. I love talking about this. It's my passion, and you've given me a voice, so I'm so grateful to Ian and Paul.
I ain't giving you a voice, mate. You've got a great voice.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
He's frozen.
His battery's
gone.
I think it's official that the battery. Yeah, but it's been lovely having you, gents. I don't think he's coming back. So I think we've.
It's like cryogenically preserved, isn't it? Now?
But let me see if I have access to his outro. That's what we need to. I'll see if I can. Hopefully the outro is there. But look, lovely meeting you, Dr. Kelly.
Yeah.
And here he is back.
Yeah, we were hot spotting. We're hot spotting, so we're running on fumes. But
you abducted.
But can I just say this? And I know I blow a lot of wind up your ass, but it's you've earned that wind, Professor. Can I just say thank you for just being you, and just being you in this country. It's the same with Dr. Oosthuis, but I don't know, you're a bit further down the road than us. And you're just like this great elder. I hate to put you down using the word elder, but that's what you are. You're one of the elders of the community. I wish you were in charge of our health system and not these crazy bureaucrat doctors that we see and go, safe and effective. Yeah. So thank you very much. We're always honoured when you take our call and agree to come on.
Thanks, Michael, very much. And it's great to meet you, Robin, and also catch up again with you, Paul. It's always good to hear your voice because it's a more reassuring voice than mine. you are more grounded than what I am. I've still got this juvenile fire in my belly at the age of 79, nearly going to hit 80, and I don't know how I'm going to put it out. But it's yeah. We're talking
We
about
enjoy your passion. We enjoy your passion, and both the passion of you two gentlemen. We've got to do something better. We're groping in the dark, but before Michael's battery runs out. Yeah, it's been great chatting, and I think we've solved all the problems for the doctors. We've made a start.
We've made
a start. Okay.
I couldn't find the hit song of Robin Kelly's, so we're going out with called "Something Magical." You want to tell us anything about that song?
Okay, that's another
Something Magical.
Just one of my songs about women, the sacred women. It doesn't sound
sacred women.
Sacred.
You want to leave it there? Leave it there.
I always leave it with the sacred women. I always do that. God bless you. Okay, thank you.
God bless you all. Take care, guys. See ya.
Thank you.
This is Robin Kelly, Dr. Robin Kelly. It's Something Magical. See you all.
Knowing glance, a slow dance, a secret rendezvous, a wild romance. We'll be as one till morning comes. Something magical has begun. Something magical, something magical, something magical has begun. One stolen kiss, one moment's bliss. Let me follow you to the abyss. Your holy crown, you're flowing down our perfect honeymoon above the clouds. Something magical, something magical, something magical has begun. Something magical, something magical, something magical has begun. Your hand in mine, your touch divine. Let me stay with you till the end of time. We'll be as one till morning comes. Something magical has begun. Something magical, something magical, something magical has begun. Something magical, something magical, Something magical has begun.